Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and today we have on a special guest I'm so excited to have on. So we have Miss Abbe Kierstein. Now, for anybody who's listened to maybe has ever thought anything like, I'm active, I eat well, I'm not seeing the results of it, especially as I'm getting older, then I want you to listen closely in this episode because this one is going to be for you. So Abbe is a client of ours here at Vital Spark Coaching. Abbe is in perimenopause. She is a entrepreneur, a busy hairstylist, business owner. So she's spending 10 plus hours a day on her feet, moving around. She came to us last fall, and at that point, she was someone who you would 100% classify as living a healthy lifestyle. She was lifting weights, she was eating clean, she was counting her calories. She, had gone to doctors, she was taking thyroid meds, she was on HRT, she was doing all the things, and yet she still felt stuck in her body. And so that was, almost about 10 or so months ago. And today, so excited to have Abbe on because she is a different person. So, Abbe, welcome to the Vanessa G podcast here. I would love to just pick your brain on all things of how you are seeing the sustainable changes in your 50s while navigating a demanding schedule. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and dive in kind of to the beginning here. I already kind of laid out a little bit of where you were at when you came to us. But I would love for you to maybe kind of take us back to that point. So when you first joined coaching with us here at Vital Spark, what were you struggling with at that time? What made you decide, all right, I need to get help?
I just could not lose a pound if I tried. I think I was that woman that looked at food and would gain weight. I was doing all the things that I probably did in my 30s and 40s and counted calories, that old school mentality, and that just did not work for me. And I guess what I've learned being with you and Coach Whitney is just the quality of my food matters so
Mm.
much. I mean, had food deliveries, delivered to my front doorstep because I'm constantly eating on the go. That was portioned out, and, of course, working out. And I'm very much a type A personality. So I was also of that mindset, 5, 6 days a week after, being on my feet all day. And just, I'm that go, go, go kind of woman with everything that I do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense. You've been successful in a lot of different areas, in kind of your field of work. And I can imagine a lot of different areas. And so it's probably really frustrating when you find yourself of like, all right, this one area I cannot seem to get nailed down. Why is it that I feel like my body is not where I want it to be? I remember on our first call together when you first reached out, you were saying like, I am the heaviest I've ever been. And I'm doing all these things. And it's so frustrating, right? Can you describe that for us a little bit more? Like, what was that like when you were coming to us here, trying all these different things, and yet it's not working?
Right. Well, I do see an endocrinologist for Hashimoto's.
Hmm.
I then went to my gynecologist, and I was also determined to start hormone replacement therapy. And I was just, stuck. And um, I knew I needed to make changes. So I guess it's hard for me to say. It's such a culmination of things that all happened at once. And of course, my endocrinologist, just getting the proper testing is somewhat impossible. But he did change my meds for that. And I started hormone replacement, and, I started your program, and it just really shifted everything for me. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much how my journey started. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, well, I can also kind of add in too. If I think something I was really impressed by when you came to us was that you were that person of, as you said, very type A. You wanted to make sure that you were doing everything you could in every area, and so that's where you had just started HRT, and you're like, all right, I'm hoping that this helps. Being in my 50s now, I know that I need some hormone support. Yet you knew that that's not going to be the end all be all. You knew that you couldn't kind of cookie cutter your way of, let me go to a doctor here for HRT, let me continue with my working on my thyroid, of having a history of Hashimoto's and continuing to take thyroid medication. Like, you knew, I need to make sure I'm checking the boxes in every area. Um, so when you came in, you obviously being very busy, like we talked about, hairstylist, running your own business. I also know that you are someone who travels often. I know that, there can be social outings, or maybe there's different things that can be demanding. Um, how was that, maybe like in that initial transition coming in? How was it learning to navigate all the different aspects of nutrition, working out, habit changes, stress management? Like, really, what did that look like for you tactically?
Well, I think to start, I was amazed at the reverse diet for me
Mm.
and couldn't even believe how much food I was eating. And I, have always been in a gym like setting. I was a college athlete. And so I was very familiar with the gym. That wasn't really anything new for me, but the weight training and really focused um, on the weight training more than the cardio machines. I mean, I haven't been on a stair climber probably since, I started with you, and just obviously getting my steps in. It's just made all the difference in the world. And, the weight training 3 days a week, because that was something too that would stress me out so much with my schedule, is how am I ever going to get to the gym? How am I fitting this in? But it's actually, I think, calmed me down, knowing that if I hit the gym 2 or 3 times a week, that's really all I need.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that, Abby, because that's something that I really hear from, especially, women who maybe have a history of being athletic and, being very that place of like, push yourself as hard as you can. The more is better type of
Mhm.
mentality, right? And
Oh,
that's
1,000%.
that's
Yeah.
exactly where the approach you were taking. And that can work for a lot of women up to a certain point. And I think your body was telling you, hey, you have passed that point to where you can't just run yourself into the ground anymore. And, as you've learned, and, Whitney's explained to you many times as well, of the impact that stress has on hormones and on our bodies. And the work that you've done by making small shifts to where other people may be like, that doesn't even make sense. How can you look and feel better doing less? But what you just said is so important and so key. You said, this is actually less stressful for me now, because trying to
Totally.
do so much, that's really hard, and
Yeah.
that's draining mentally, physically. And so by giving your body both a change in format, because there's also a lot of value, I think, in changing the structure of how we exercise and how we kind of like operate with our bodies, but also going from pushing yourself really hard to actually saying, hey, let me spend more time in parasympathetic, really working on letting my nervous system relax, just going for more relaxing walking rather than cardio, incline walk, all that kind of things, right?
And of course, I was of that generation of, just cardio, yeah, crazy amounts of it. And just obviously couldn't sustain that at all.
Hmm.
So this is very doable, this schedule. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so you were, you already came to us, you were already tracking, like we talked about, you were eating more around that like 1400, 1500 calorie range. And so you mentioned of coming in, something we were able to work on right away is actually increasing your calories rather than
Right.
trying to restrict more and, force your body to lose weight when your body was telling us, hey, I'm not going to lose weight right now. I don't feel safe to lose weight. Hormones are not in a good place. Instead, we need to give your body the building blocks it needed for hormones to support what you were doing on the HRT side, and make sure we're giving your body that well-rounded approach. So, speak to that a little bit more. What did that look like, increasing your calories? Were you ever, nervous or worried, or were you just like, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it?
I mean, again, my mindset was so different, before I started this program. So I was nervous, but, I would check in with the scale and just my clothing. And I know at some point, Whitney had me at, my macros were, you know, 2,100 calorie. I mean, I was eating, which was amazing because I love food. Um, so yeah, and now, we're in a different phase where I'm, not eating 2100 but I'm not hungry. Even while I was on the flush, I wasn't hungry at all because I think people hear that term and they think it's like so restrictive, and it was just again changing my foods and eating whole foods, and there's some elimination to it, but I was never hungry on that as well, and that really I think made a difference for me.
That's such a key point too, because you're exactly right. A lot of people think I should feel hunger, I should feel restricted in order to be losing weight. And we actually needed to get your body again to that place of being safe. We need to feed your body up, and even the functional health protocols like the flush you mentioned, which was one that we took you through and you had a lot of success with. That protocol is actually meant to boost your metabolism. So often we're actually, we often don't even tell clients how many calories we're going to put them on for the flush, because that is a time period where we're going to just say, hey, just eat these foods in these amounts, more of a meal plan approach. And often people would be surprised to know how many calories they're actually eating when they're doing
Right.
that, because it's more than they would expect and more than they
Yeah.
think.
No, I wasn't hungry. I get a little intimidated by cooking. I have to say that's not my forte, but I'm making changes with that and just planning ahead. So, obviously that helped me with the flush because I needed to be super organized with my meals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great.
I always say that the flush is it does a lot of good, not just on like what it's doing for our bodies, but what it does for our minds too. Because I know I've felt the same way of like I don't really like to cook, wouldn't consider myself great in the kitchen, but when you do something where it's like, all right, I have to cook my meals for this, it kind of forces you to challenge those beliefs a little bit and to be like, okay, maybe I just don't really like it, or maybe I'm not like a 5-star chef, but like I know that I can do it. So I'm not going to allow that narrative of telling myself that like I can't cook and things like that hold me back. And it does challenge you and challenge your identity in some of those ways.
Right. Especially the coffee one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I still am following that pretty much.
How has
Or
that been? I something you came in saying to me was energy is something that you want to see improvements in. And I think something you had mentioned early on is like a little nervous about like anything that would involve, giving up coffee, anything like that. And I'm like, let's not worry about that. And that came way down the road in your journey, but yet here you are and you're doing
right. No, it wasn't that hard for me. Obviously, I love the taste of coffee.
it.
Um, but the tea has been a great shift.
Hmm.
And every now and then I still will have a coffee here or there, but
Hmm.
the most part, most of my mornings are with tea. And I did have coffee recently in the morning, and I just couldn't believe how jittery I got from, like, it was kind of crazy how I did feel after having, a cup of coffee in the morning. So I'm still doing the tea, and I enjoy that. And, if I want an afternoon coffee every now and then, I will have it, but I'm not really missing it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of when you can get your body in a good place where you aren't needing it. You aren't relying on it, but you can have it then become just an option. It's more of like a tool to use when you want, or even if it's something you want to, continue drinking for the taste of it. Like I'm with you there. It's like
Right.
that's when we can bring in options even of like, okay, going through periods of maybe just drinking decaf or half calf and just like reminding yourself that I can enjoy this for the taste without needing it and convincing myself that I'm not a, operational human being until I have my coffee.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that wasn't too hard for me.
So let's talk about a little bit more of the changes you've noticed in your body. So it's been about 10 months now. Talk to us about what that's been like. What are you feeling? What changes have you seen? What are you still working on? You're in the journey now.
Well, I'm definitely a lot stronger. There's no question. Just lifting, and what I'm able to lift, I'm much stronger. I think from the beginning, starting with you, I've lost 8 pounds.
Dang.
Slow and steady,
Mhm.
I guess wins the race. And I would say belly fat has been, obviously such a problem with my age. And insulin and everything else that goes on in our bodies. So I would say that that has gone down quite a bit. Um, and, I'm looking forward to, maybe shedding a few more pounds and, having more definition and just changing my overall body composition.
Absolutely. And I want to really shout you out on that one because you're not even doing yourself justice on the changes you've seen with that. I know when you had sent Whitney kind of some updated side by side photos not too long ago, and Whitney shared those with me because she was so excited. And
God, they're the worst in your bathroom. Yeah. Not something I love doing. Yeah.
nobody loves that feeling. But I mean, Abby, I was so impressed because especially what's really exciting to me is that those photos that we were looking at, that was actually prior to you shifting into the phase that you're currently in now, where now is the phase that we're really honing in on body composition changes. Now is when we're focusing on fat loss. Everything you've achieved up until now has been side effects of us working on your health, working on your hormones, working on your nervous system, working on your gut health, and just the habits that you've acquired. Your body has been responding to that. And even as you mentioned, something that so many women in your age group complain about is belly fat being so stubborn and hard to lose. And you have seen changes in belly fat. That's incredible.
Yeah. No, it is nice. And, of course, like any other woman, I still have more to go, but we're in the right direction. So
Absolutely.
so that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what with some of the changes you've made in terms of energy improving, I know something I think you haven't mentioned yet, but I know that you've mentioned in check-ins and things is seeing decreasing in bloating, some positive improvements in digestion over the course of this journey. Like, how has maybe your confidence in your body, or just in your lifestyle, or what just feels maybe possible for you, shifted or changed? And I'm curious how that impacts how you show up day to day, or maybe conversations you're having with the women in your chairs.
Right. Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me was, I think, having, an autoimmune disease, and I've been told before to cut out gluten and things like that. Um, and I think the flush, obviously, you're eliminating quite a few things in your diet. And I just continued on to stay gluten and dairy free. And I definitely noticed the difference. Um, if I happen to go out to eat and there's dairy in something, I feel off, and I can tell. So that's made a huge difference. And, just trying to be mindful. I do go out to eat a lot. So just making better choices on how I order and what I eat.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that there's probably some ladies listening that are like, all right, Abby, tell us your secrets. What does that look like? Of you're often eating out, you're often traveling. How do you navigate those things? What are maybe your tips or tricks or secrets?
Well, definitely don't eat the bread basket anymore. Because of course I love that. But just ordering, leading with protein and vegetables.
Hmm.
And if there's sweet potato fries, I might dabble in those. Yeah, just vegetables and protein first. It could be fish or chicken, steak even. Yeah, and just seeing what my macros are left in order for me to go out to eat that night. And
Yeah.
I did my best, of gauging.
100%. And that's what it comes down to. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. And I think that you have been ruthlessly consistent in your journey through different challenges that have come up, and learning to navigate maybe more, stressful times, and things like that too. You have continued to show up for yourself week after week, not trying to be perfect, but just trying to consistently show up, make improvements, small
Yeah.
ones, time after time.
And now I read all, like, every food label, whereas before I just didn't as much. And now it's amazing what's in our foods. So obviously just making sure things are gluten and dairy free.
Yeah. So I want to, for our listeners too, kind of explain what Abby had mentioned there that I think is really important for anybody who has an autoimmune disease. It can be really powerful to try cutting out gluten and dairy because these are going to be more inflammatory. And so, unfortunately, for those who do have autoimmune diseases, your immune system is already being flared up. So, really working on lowering inflammation. But specifically in Abby's case, so she has Hashimoto's. So, Hashimoto's is essentially autoimmune disease of the thyroid. Your body, your immune system is attacking your thyroid. And so, what can be happening is when we eat gluten specifically, the actual protein structure in gluten, your body sees that as essentially mistaking it for thyroid to where it can actually flare up your body attacking the thyroid. So for those who have Hashimoto specifically, that's why we do in those cases typically recommend keeping gluten out long term. That's not a across the board everybody has to do that, but in Abby's case that's why she's doing it, and clearly you're feeling and seeing the changes from doing that too.
For sure. Definitely that flush made such a big difference, from not eating gluten and dairy and a few other various things. But at least I just stuck with those two items, which are, can be a challenge, but I figured it out.
Yeah, and I find, at least, I don't know if you feel the same way, but for myself personally, anytime there's something where if I remove something for a period of time and I feel a difference, that motivates me to maybe want to keep it out for longer or just for, the kind of like near future, things like that. That often I think people are afraid to cut things out because they're afraid of what that will feel like. Just try, because you might find that you feel better and that creates the motivation that you're afraid you won't have until you cut it out anyway.
1,000%. That's what I said. I could do this. My flush was 2 weeks. I know it varies client to client. And I was like, I can definitely do this for 2 weeks. I can,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely, make those changes. They weren't hard.
Yeah. Anybody can do anything for 2 weeks. You do not have
Right.
to be a powerhouse like Abby to be able to do
Right.
that. I think it's possible for anybody. And it's one of the things that I find really exciting is it creates a lot of confidence for people when they're like, wow, I didn't think I could do something hard and I did it. And now I actually feel more confident in my ability to do other hard things. And that's a beautiful thing too.
Right. For sure. And I can cook.
Heck yeah. I love it. Well, I want to ask you a couple questions that I actually got from some of the listeners on Instagram when I put this out there. And I said, hey, I'm going to be actually interviewing one of our clients for the podcast. What do you want me to ask her? So, one question I got, Abby, and you started to talk about this a little bit already, but I think this would be a great thing for you to clarify as well. So, this question is, when did you first start to notice a shift after starting with Vital Spark?
Um, I know. I feel like I've been in it now since December. I mean, I think right away, the scale was definitely slow, but I was also increasing my food so much and it wasn't going up. It may have been a pound down. So I do feel like right away I saw some improvements just based on the amount of food that I was able to eat. Um, and that was also a time too. I look back and it was so easy for me to, take a big bowl of Greek yogurt to work and obviously put lots of, fruits and nuts and things like that. But I did rely a lot on, Greek yogurt. And so things were definitely probably slower because gluten probably just didn't agree with me.
Yeah, so maybe reaching for some of the foods that were more convenient at that time that maybe weren't serving you as much.
Right.
Um, I think what you noted there too is important to point out. If you were kind of keeping an eye on the scale you had mentioned earlier of like here and there, kind of checking in with it. But I know something that you were actively working on with WIT as well is kind of detaching from the scale because, as you know, in that period of time, we're not looking to see the scale go down. We're looking at your metabolism increasing. And we know that's happening if we are able to eat more food. We're noticing energy going up. We're noticing symptoms improving across the board. And so with that, you were, one of those really lucky people of your weight just kind of stayed steady, kind of, stayed up, down a little bit here and there, just kind of stayed within that range. But I also want to let, listeners know as well, different bodies can respond differently to that process. And especially for those who have been really drastically under eating, where you weren't like horribly drastically under eating 1400, 1500 calories. It was lower than you needed. Like you're losing weight
Right.
now at
Mm.
1800 in your calorie deficit. But for some clients who come to us, I want to also put this out there. They might be eating 1,000, 1,200 calories. And in that process of reversing, their body may put on a few pounds in that process.
And
Um,
you did mention that to me on
mhm.
our first, intake call. You did say this could take a year, um, of this process. So you did let me know that.
I always try. We always try on our end to set really realistic and honest expectations with everybody because it's hard when there's a lot of noise in diet culture. People wanting to see fast changes. I know you and I were talking about before we hit record of you see a
Mhm.
lot in your industry working in beauty of a lot of women maybe making choices that don't support them long term.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another question that I got here was what has been the hardest part for you so far in this process?
Um, oh, the hardest. Hmm. I don't know if I have one. I don't, I do. Well, it all comes back to the cooking and the meal prep for me because I am just not good in the kitchen. Or, my youngest daughter my oldest daughter who lives with me currently, she's a cook. So I do get spoiled by her. But now I sort of had to make my food for myself. And I would say that was the hardest part for me, just getting my week together so that I can grab my meals quick in the morning and get to work because sometimes I may have lunch and dinner at work. So that was probably the hardest.
Yeah, that's a very real thing that, especially business owners that come across is like if you don't plan, you find yourself either not eating or just kind of like finding whatever quick foods you can. And
Right.
typically either one, you're either under eating in those instances or just eating foods that are not going to be supportive for your body.
Right. That's definitely, yeah, the profession I'm in, and, eat 15 minutes and go back and go right back to work. Yeah. So meal prep, I'd say, was the hardest for me.
Yeah. What does that look like for you now then, meal prepping?
It's more organized and planned, and it's just part of my routine now of, thinking ahead and obviously having all the items I need in the house for the week.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really hope that anybody who's listening really taking note of the fact that it's not this big drastic thing of okay, I go through this really intensive fancy process. It's really just making the commitment of I'm just going to figure this out and I'm just going to consistently make it happen. And when you do that, when you prepare, you are setting yourself up for success in ways that so many others aren't doing. And it's these small things like planning meals in advance, having food prepped and ready to take with you when you're leaving the house that go such a long way for people.
Right. That's been a new phase for me. The other thing I was going to say, which was not difficult for me at all, is I'm not a big drinker.
Mm.
So maybe for some women, alcohol's their thing. It's just, I'm, so that's definitely not a factor
Yeah,
for me, but that could be a struggle for some women,
totally.
cutting on alcohol. But I'm glad that wasn't, I'd rather eat my food.
I'm the same way.
Calories. Yeah, I'd rather eat my calories. Yeah.
I get it. Um, so let's do one more question maybe from Instagram here. So this question is what should you expect working with a coach? How much is on you and how much do they bring?
Okay. So you do have your weekly check-ins with your coach. It's y- that's your time to ask for any help or guidance that you need. Um, if you feel like you need further testing with, hormones, your gut, I mean, I would say start sooner than later. Um, you know, Maximize your time, use it wisely with your coach. Um, And I was pretty much fine, checking in weekly. We did have a couple of phone calls, Whitney and myself. Yeah, I think just speak up.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways anybody can have is and this is of course me adding kind of my perspective on the question, but when it's, really asking of like the how much is on you versus how much do they bring, um, you have to really make use of your investment. And this can be, I think, a harsh thing for some people to hear, but in anywhere in life, like I know, Abby, you've invested in business coaches and things too. It's the same across the board of anywhere in life that you are making a exchange of money, wanting a result. The result doesn't come with the exchange of money. The
Right,
result comes with you making that commitment and you showing up for yourself. Does that
right.
mean that you should feel completely lost trying to figure everything out on your own? No. Hopefully, if you're working with especially like in our kind of industry, working with a coach, they're going to give you guidance. But you have to raise your hand. You have to share when you're struggling. You have to ask questions. You have to make use of that. And so it requires showing up on both sides, right?
1,000%. Yes. You definitely, and I was in it to change and, continue on this healthy journey, and obviously to be able to do it at some point without the guidance of, your team, and have those lifelong skills to continue on.
Do you feel like you're getting to that point of like you see the path of this being sustainable to graduate on your own as you
I
near that?
think Yeah, I think I can. I guess what I'm learning, obviously, like there's so much science behind it and how you sort of tweak your macros, um, where your maintenance is versus your, in a deficit. And so that I probably still have more to learn.
That'll come
And
in the
just,
flourish phase. Don't you worry.
yeah, exactly. And what my body can and can't do.
Mhm.
I know at one point I even tried intermittent fasting. That was a joke for me. That that did nothing. And then, when it came time, my window opened to eat. I had a client in my chair, and then
Mm,
another client. Like so that just didn't work for me at all, and definitely not good for my body.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think the only other question I wanted to ask you is so for anybody who's listening, let's say there's probably somebody who's listening to this episode right now who she relates to you in a lot of ways. Maybe she's perimenopausal. She might be in her 50s, she might be in her 40s. Maybe she has a history of thyroid issues. Maybe she has hormonal imbalances. But whatever it is, whatever that piece of your story that she's grabbed onto, she relates to you and she's feeling stuck right now. She's where you were when you reached out last fall. What would you want her to know? What do you want her to take away from this episode?
If I could do it, you can do it. And I really thought my body was so stuck. I really didn't think I could lose a pound at this point in my life. And I feel like my endocrinologist even kind of, made comments to me about, at that point I should just love myself where I am and accept where I am, which I didn't say anything, and I just walked out of there, and I knew what I was going to do. And I'm in charge, and this is not okay. And I don't want to feel like this. So you can do it. And I will say, cutting out as much processed foods will help tremendously. And, I was just that quick protein bars and grabbing food on the go and not really reading my food labels, but that will definitely help you.
Absolutely. When you can take that approach of having the balance, like you mentioned, still going out to eat, still enjoying life, letting other family members cook meals and getting to enjoy that, like still living life, not being rigid, but yet having a standard that you hold yourself to when it comes to food quality. I really think that is such a huge thing that so many people are missing. They go all or nothing. They think I either need to be perfect and never eat out, never, have any of these bad ingredients, always have to be 100% on point with everything, or I'm not going to do any of that and I'm just going to, give up, like you said, take the endocrinologist advice and say, well, I guess this is the best I can ever look. I guess I need to accept my body's changing. I'm getting older and this is it. But you didn't do that.
No, and I will say, that may come along, you know, with different personalities. I mean, I don't think I'm pretty extreme. I'm, someone who can get on a scale and not get on a scale for, another 5 days, or I'm not too obsessive. I just try to do the best I can with little changes and trying to make smart changes, when I am out. And I also like to do them quietly. Like, I don't need to announce my food choices. When I go out to eat, I just order what I want to order. It's what I want to eat or not eat, you know. But yes, cleaning up your diet at least 80% of the time will be beneficial.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Abby, thank you so much for taking time, coming on here, being open about your journey, your story. I think your story is such a great reminder that making progress in, 40s, 50s and beyond, it's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's about doing what's going to make the biggest difference. And like you talked about in this episode, I heard you mentioning being actually softer in your body when it comes to exercise, not pushing your body, not overstressing yourself with exercise and the things you're trying to do. Focusing on food quality, preparing and setting yourself up for success with meal prep and trying to cook more meals at home. Like these are the small things that when done consistently, they can add up to big changes over time. So I think that a lot of women are going to take some really great things from this episode and really be inspired by this. So thank you so, so much. If anybody
You
wants
well,
to reach out to you and
yeah,
maybe learn from you, maybe even find out a little bit more about what you do. If by the way, everybody, she is an incredible hairstylist in South
thank you.
Florida, so you should check her out. But where can they learn more about you? Where can they maybe connect with you?
On Instagram, Blowouts by Abby and more, and I am located in West El Rey, Florida.
Awesome. All
Yeah,
right. Well, maybe we'll drop the handle then in the show notes as well, so that they can reach out to you. Uh,
thank you.
Abby, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And consistency is key. That with everything we do. So just showing up for yourself is
absolutely.
huge. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great episode.
Right. Thank you, Vanessa.